Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I am your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Tammy Huynh from Leaf and Impression. Tammy is a horticulturist and writer and also a presenter on Gardening Australia. And she got her start in the industry after studying horticultural science and is also a graduate of Ryde TAFE in New South Wales. So another talented person in the industry who's come out of Ryde TAFE. She began working at Better Homes Garden magazine before then moving on to Yates and then starting Leaf and Impression, where she was doing workshops and writing as well, and then got the opportunity to be on an episode of Gardening Australia before then being asked to be a presenter. And in 2021, she was voted the Australian Institute of Horticulture Horticulturist of the Year. And in this chat, she talks about how sometimes she's had trouble in the past charging enough for the work that she does because it's such a giving industry and she loves it so much. So it was a very relatable point that she made there. But yeah, a hell of a lot of fun to chat to, Tammy was. So hopefully you enjoyed this chat with Tammy Huynh. Tammy, thank you for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
Oh, straight into it, Joel. How did I start? So I was studying horticultural science at uni, and I was in my last year. We had an honours year, and it's a compulsory year. It sounds flash that I did my honours, but it was compulsory at Sydney Uni for hort science and ag science to do an honours year. And as I was sort of wrapping that up, my supervisor at the time came to me and was like, "Hey, there's a job at Better Homes and Gardens as an assistant gardening editor. Like, why didn't you go for it?" And I loved writing, and we would write journal articles and things for, and other essays to submit. And so I think maybe he liked my writing style, and he's just like, maybe this will be a good fit for you. And I honestly thought, assistant gardening editor, that meant I was like literally running around the office, like getting people coffee and some things. That's what it sounds like to be an assistant. And I was like, yeah, well, why not give it a go? Because I don't even know what I want to do with this hort science degree yet, and managed to land myself an interview. And I remember it was quite daunting because the editor of the Better Homes and Gardens magazine said to me, she's like, do you read the magazine? And I was like, sorry. No. I was like, I may as well be truthful rather than, try and lie my way through it. It's like, no, I don't. And but I think they just saw something in me, I guess, where they were like, you know what, we'll give you a chance. And maybe you were just the better of the candidates. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, they gave me a chance. And that really then kickstarted my career in horticulture. That was back in 2010, I think. Yeah. So I started there and then just, was learning. And I did horticultural science, so I knew all the science behind plants, but not so much gardening. Like I gardened at home, but not so much the design and how plants go together and why, certain colors and whatever work. So, and I was around the TV researchers who a lot of them had done landscape design at Ryde TAFE. And I was like, I should go and skill myself on this. So I did that part-time at night. So I'd finish, work, and 2 nights a week I'd drive myself to TAFE and learn about landscape design. And so I love design, but I just realized throughout that process, design's not so much for me. Like I don't have that eye for it. And, the people who do, like they really do. So I'm just like, I'm not inserting myself into that world. I know my capabilities and, love learning about it. And I'm glad I did, because then I'm able to then apply that to my writing. So it really helped, I guess, give me a better understanding of, gardening, landscaping, and then enabled me to write about it and also continue that into my career now.
And what was it that made you choose horticultural science to start studying?
So that's another long story too, where, my parents, first, well, they're not in first, they're refugees from Vietnam. They escaped the Vietnam War, came here wanting a better life. And, they had us kids, and it was always drummed into us from the start, like, you've got to be a doctor, or a lawyer, a pharmacist, like, those elite level jobs, because, we worked hard, we escaped that life to give you a better life. And so we were like, okay, well, that's, we got to try and make our parents proud. And I remember getting, I think towards the end of high school, I was like, you know what, I think I want to be a psychologist. I really love learning about psychology and people and how they interact. And my dad, as blunt as he is, he was like, you're not going to get a job in psychology. Like it's that's a dead end industry. That's what he said to me. But then he said to me, he was like, he had just recently purchased some land. He's like, why didn't you go study agriculture? I'm like, didn't you escape that life? Didn't you escape farming and, having to your work, like break your back working on the land to give us a better life? And now you want me to study agriculture? And growing up in the area, I did lots of, first generation, I guess, children or lots of Asians in our area. When, you don't go and study agriculture. It's not a thing. But I had that in my mind, and I got into psychology at Macquarie University, and then I also got an offer for ag science at Sydney Uni. And this is a funny story, because I basically chose Sydney Uni because Macquarie Uni was too hard to get to, like travel wise. Like the infrastructure wasn't set up, and I was like, I don't really want to spend 2 hours, bus, train, and another bus just to get to uni. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. And I'm just going to see what happens. And I think it was in my late towards the first year of ag science, I was like, actually, I just really like learning about plants. And then changed to horticulture. And so that's where that all came from. Like I'd been gardening because my grandma, my maternal grandma, she lived with us, and that's all she did. She gardened, and I'd always be in the garden with her, but not really understanding that this could be a job, or, you could make a career out of it. And so it was really, yeah, my dad who sort of planted that seed and said, why don't you try this? And I'm grateful, like forever grateful to him, because otherwise I don't think I'd be here.
Yeah, it's funny when you look back, because I've got early memories of working in the garden with my mum and planting certain things, and I never sort of had an interest in it at the time, but I can still remember doing that, like when I
Yeah.
was 10 or 12 years old.
Yeah, and this all skills that you picked up, and I'm so glad that we were able to do that. But it's amazing that, I guess, yeah, now you're in your landscape here. I mean, did you start in landscape, or did you fumble your way and then land here?
Yeah, I was starting hospitality because I had no idea. Like I reckon 95% of the people had no idea what I wanted to do. I went on a Kentucky tour in New Zealand and thought, oh, I wouldn't mind being a tour guide, so see if I can get into hospitality, into tourism. But my school marks weren't enough for that, so didn't end up getting to that. But then, yeah, just had no idea what I wanted to do. Then I thought, I like working outside, I reckon. So I went and worked at a golf course, and
Oh,
it loved that,
nice.
but
Yeah,
didn't like getting up at 4:30 in the morning. So do
fair.
something that's a bit more civilized, and yeah, decided to get into landscaping. But to get into it, because I wanted to put myself ahead of other people, so I went and worked at a nursery and studied horticulture as well. So yeah, so I've got a bigger plant knowledge than most landscapers who've got their building license, but nowhere near gardeners or designers.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I love what you said about designers just having that eye. I had that exact conversation with someone yesterday, because he was asking me, we were standing on one job that we were working on, and he looking at the two jobs either side, and he said, "What do you think of these two gardens? They look pretty cool." I said, "No, they're not that great." And he said, "What is it about it that's not good?" And I said, "I don't know what it is, but when you see something good, you know when you see it. So you can't
Yeah.
necessarily put your finger on it, but when you see it, you see it." So some people have got
Yes.
that and some don't.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you there. It's like I know there's something wrong with it, but I don't quite, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one thing to fill in a space, but yeah, when you see someone who's talented with plants and using the space, it's a joy to look at.
Yeah, it totally is.
And yeah, and you would have seen a lot of those people when you went to work at Better Homes and Gardens, I imagine, because I've had a
Oh,
bit to do with some of the researchers, and there's some talented people there.
oh, there are. Like there were a couple of people, I think, before Rowie came along, but it's just, I just saw what they were doing in design. It's like, how'd you come up with that? Like,
Yeah.
where does it all come from? And like I said, a majority of them came from, Ride, studying landscape design at Ride. I'm like, all right, I got to go do this. I got to go, even though I didn't have any plans to become a landscape designer, it's just like, I need to better understand what's going on here.
Yeah, it seems similar. Like Ride TAFE seems like the New South Wales equivalent of Burnley in Victoria. Like it
Yep.
seems like everyone who's been to Burnley is some of the most talented people in the industry, and the same
Yes.
with Ride.
Yep. No, I think so. A lot of people have come out of there for sure.
Yeah. So how long are you at Better Homes and Gardens for?
I think that was about 5.5 years. So I had a good stint there, and I had a great mentor, Roger Fox, who was the editor at the time. Like, really took me under his wing, and because while I could write, I wasn't, I guess, versed in magazine writing, the inspirational garden, and getting people motivated to garden or consider this plant. So he really was quite patient with me and just sort of massaging those, I guess, those words out of me which was amazing. So no, totally indebted to him for doing that, because he didn't really need to, but I suppose it helped him as well, with the workflow. So yeah, I was there for about 5.5 years before then. I think I got to a point where I guess most people do. It's like, well, what's next? What else could I be doing in horticulture? I didn't see, necessarily, I guess, what could I do in magazine, like other than to take Roger's job, which is like, well, that was it. And then there was an opportunity that came up with Yates, and they were launching live chat at the time, and it was a big thing. I had heard about it because you just jump online, you can talk to a horticulturist for free. And they were looking for someone to lead their team of horticulturists because it was growing. And while I'd never had any experience managing a team before, I was like, well, I think we could give this a go and see how it goes. And yeah, then I was at Yates for about 2.5 years. And it was a great learning experience because I had actually, because my first job, I guess, out of uni was with the magazine. So I haven't had any sort of face-to-face interactions, or any sort of not even face-to-face, like even online or on the phone with consumers who were using garden products. So it was real like learning curve and understanding how people use things and why they do things the way they do. And do you think that, from a manufacturer's point of view, that, you've given everyone all the information that they could possibly need to go and use this product in their garden, and yet we're somehow still failing them because they're either not reading it, most people who read instructions until after, when it stuffs up, you're like, oh crap, maybe I should have read it. So yeah, real eye-opening experience to be on that side.
Yeah, you'd be getting the feedback a lot quicker as well if it's the
Oh
face to face or
yes.
online.
Oh yeah, they're quick to tell you. I mean, as we are, I think humans are just like, when something angers us, we're gonna like let people know. But if it makes us happy, we're not gonna necessarily let everyone
Yeah.
know. But yeah, so we, despite not to say, that was the majority of the times, but I think they're the times you unfortunately do remember, because they were negative experiences when you have with people who are just like down your throat because their seeds didn't germinate, or something died, and you're like, okay, there's bigger problems in the world, but this is the big problem right now. So yeah.
Yeah, and all the variables within gardens as well, like to be able to say who's at fault or what went wrong. It's
Yeah,
pretty challenging.
that's it. And sometimes you try and walk people through it, but sometimes people don't want to hear that. They just want to hear that I'm the one that's right because I bought your product, I used it like I'm supposed to use it, and it didn't work. So don't talk to me like I'm sort of a dummy or anything like that. It's like, I'm not trying to. It's like, I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah.
what went wrong where, and how can we prevent that from happening in the future, rather than just giving you a refund or a replacement for it then to happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. I've clients ring me up sometimes and they'll say that, our plants are dying. Like, is it too wet or are we not watering enough? I say, I don't know. Put your finger in the soil. If it's wet, it might be too wet. If it's dry, it's probably not wet enough. Like, I can't say what's wrong with it without being there. So
Yeah,
it's
without
pretty
having the
hard.
context, it's so hard. And that's what I often find, where people come up to me now, they're like, my plants are dying. Like why? It's like the leaf is browning. It's like, okay, well, we have to go back to like, okay, what have you been doing? Where do you put it? And then once they show you an image, it's like, the leaf margin slightly browning, and they're just losing their marbles because they're like, well, it's not perfect like it is on Instagram. Why isn't it perfect? It's like, actually, that's not a problem. Just don't worry about it. You're stressing over nothing.
Yeah. Well, I haven't had one for years now, but every year I used to get a call from a client in winter saying that their plants are dying, and they're just deciduous, so they're losing the leaves. Every year for 5 years I would get it.
Oh, wow.
But,
Yep. Yeah.
but yeah, I would never call them up to tell them that. I would just send them an email so it's not as embarrassing for them to hear
Yeah.
me on the phone
It's
while they
just,
give them the answer. So
that's
and
very
then
kind of you.
and where was it to after Yates? Were you doing any of your own stuff in the meantime, or was it still you all just working for other people at the
So
time?
I was doing Yates, and then I would every now and then do a bit of freelance writing, because I missed that part. And so I'd just contact my old editor and be like, oh, if you need anyone to write, I'm here. And so I'd get the occasional story. But I think it was after, yeah, maybe 2.5 years or three, again, was sort of thinking, well, what else can I do? And I had a friend had contacted me to step in for him to do a couple of workshops at a garden center. because he wasn't able to do them, or maybe he needed to be in two places at once. So it was like, all right, well, are you keen on, running a workshop? And I was like, haven't done it before. I'll happy to give it a go. And I did it. I really enjoyed get the face-to-face interaction, but then seeing people like want to learn and want to be there, different to the whole when consumers are calling up complaining about products. So it was really a great experience, because you just saw light bulbs go off on people's like minds. You're like, oh, I have to water, or I have to give it sun, I have to whatever basic, whatever I thought was, basic plant knowledge that's not actually common knowledge. So that sort of started towards, I guess, the end of my time at Yates. And then I think I just had a moment where I was like, I could try and go out on my own and, do freelance writing and workshops and whatever horticultural things may come my way. So it was in, 2019, end of 2019, decided to do that. And then, was it end of 2018? And then 2019 started Leaf and Impression.
Yeah, I do love that as well. That when people use a pun in their business name. And I did pick up before where you said someone planted a seed in your mind. So I didn't understand.
You can see she's yes, I love a good pun, and I don't care how, if people think they're, such a faux pas. I'm like, no, I love puns. And I think it's fitting because Leaf and Impression, it ties into my writing, but also, ties into what I do, is to try and leave an impression with those who, I get to, be with.
Yeah, the first landscaping guy I worked for was my first, industry experience. The business, his name was Will, his first name,
Yep.
and the company was called Goodwill to All Gardens. It was a good start.
Great.
So what was involved there when you were starting your own thing? What sort of work were you doing to start that?
So that one was just reaching out to magazine editors and just introducing myself, and it's like, do you need any articles? And there were some people who came back and said yes, others were like, no, we're cool. And it's like, okay, that's cool. And then decide with the workshops, who was I going to approach with that? So started retail centers, corporates, councils, just basically reaching out. And that was hard, especially when there's times where it's like, oh no, not interested. And I was also figuring out pricing as well, like, well, what do you price this at that people can afford, but also that I'm still covering the costs of the workshop plus paying myself. So learning curve, and I'm still learning now. There are times where I'm like, I did not price enough for that job, because you get home at the end of that workshop or event or whatever it was, you're like, I put so much time and effort into that. But I think maybe because of, I don't know, I think I see a lot of people in the gardening industry, we just want to keep giving because we don't want people to fail with plants. And it's just like, and when you're then the energy is buzzing and you're just like, you're into it, you're like, it doesn't matter about the money that whatever you're making. And so then I think when you get home, then you're like, okay, actually maybe it didn't add up, but it's okay. It was a learning, and it wasn't a failure. It was definitely a lesson, but just to be able to give that to the people and have them just, go home, even if they didn't take in everything that you said, hopefully they've learned something from your talk or the event.
Yeah, it's also because people have such a passion for the industry, so you love what you're doing. So then or sometimes feels guilty to charge too much for it.
Yeah.
But then you realize you need to do that to be able to continually to do it and to be sustainable.
Yes. We still need to look after ourselves, but totally, like, this industry is so giving. Time, plants, like, people are just like, take them. Like, I don't want this anymore. Or, I'm just, take these cut. Like, everyone is so generous with their time. It's and knowledge. So it's a beautiful industry to be part of.
And I saw that you were a previous winner of the Horticulturist of the Year through the Australian Institute of Horticulture. When did that happen?
Yeah, that was really cool. That was 2021. And I remember getting an email. I think I was, I don't know, I think I was in the gym that night and I got an email, and it was like, oh, you've been nominated. I'm like, oh, like, cool. I didn't know that. I'm like, and then I was like, is this a everyone gets nominated thing, or is it, because I'm like, is it just a participation award?
Yeah.
But no, they wrote back and said, no, like, someone's nominated you. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, but they don't tell you who. And I'm like, wow, someone's actually taken the time and, put in a form or whatever it was to say, why I'm worthy of this award. I'm like, that's really cool. And I can't even remember how long after that, but then was told that, oh, you've won. I'm like, oh crap. Like, that's amazing. I'm like, to be recognized by your peers as, contributing towards the industry, was a really big thing. And it was really special, and it still is, because, you sort of just keep doing as you do, and, hoping that you're making an impact, but not realizing, I guess, how much of an impact you're making. So it was really nice to be recognized for that.
And did you ever find out who nominated you?
I didn't actually. I should find out. I don't know if it's an
Yes, yeah.
anonymous thing, but I have a couple of ideas, but I should actually just ask them and who actually did it, so I can actually go and thank them for it.
Yeah. So did you have to do a year's worth of traveling around talking for that, or what was involved with?
No, like I think a lot of people thought, like, so is it like a Miss Universe? You get something for it and then you have to go and, preach horticulture. I'm like, no, nothing happened. Actually, I got my award, which was it was special. And we had an awards night, I think, because was it 2020 or 2021, like, when, COVID years.
Yeah.
So I think it got postponed, and then it wasn't until the year after, I think, that we all got together, like a small get together, and had the awards night. So that was really nice to, I guess, meet different people in the industry. And yeah, so no garden talks or anything like that.
Yeah, and no staff that you carried around.
It was a trowel that's like embedded in, like, it looks like it's meant to be, I guess, dirt, but it's, I guess, resin, or I don't know, whatever it is. And it's quite heavy. So it just sits on the shelf.
Nice.
Yeah, that's.
And you're quite big on indoor plants. Yeah, has that always been the case?
I don't know. Yeah, probably not always, but it's definitely been for a while. Because I remember even starting out in magazine, so it's 2010, and it was not really a big thing then. And even writing about it, it's like, oh, like, really, indoor plants? But I don't know what happened in, like, during, I guess, a couple of years after that. I think it was someone, I think, gave me an anthurium, and, just the flamingo flower that you buy at your local nursery. And I don't know, then I just had that sitting close by, and then it sort of started to grow and continue to grow. And then I don't know if it ever exploded at one point. I probably did. I think prior to COVID was, visiting all these plant festivals and nurseries. And then obviously COVID really took off, and the indoor plant scene just crazy, which was amazing for the industry. Like, I've been hearing people saying, like, we've never had anything like this. So that's amazing. And more plants in people's homes, even better.
Yeah, it's insane how big of an industry it is now. Like,
And
also,
keeps...
like, people not only for aesthetics, but even talking about the benefits, like health benefits of having plants in the house.
Yes, I mean, I think there's been extensive research, but I love that. I think UTS did one with, oh, I can't remember. So it was in collaboration with a company, but they were just, they unveiled that it was like, it's a soil microbes that how they interact. And I can't even remember the study, but it was really the soil playing a big part in, I guess, boosting our moods and our mental well-being, not just the plants themselves. So that was really cool. So,
I didn't. Yeah, I haven't heard of that.
Look it up. I'm pretty sure it's UTS, and I can't remember in conjunction with who, but I remember being fascinated by that, because I was like, what, the soil plays a huge part. Like, soil's great, but I didn't know that it also interacts with the plant as well to give off these, whatever it does for our mental health and well-being.
And so, have you got a fair old jungle at your place?
A little bit. I've only got plants in this room. Well, I'm renting at the moment, and a lot of my plants are at my parents' place because they've got the space. Because I don't know how long I'm going to be here for, so I don't want to just completely fill it up. And it's not that I haven't got a lot of lighting, and I haven't really looked at improving, like, getting grow lights and stuff for this place yet, because it feels so temporary.
Yep.
Which isn't, if you're renting, I don't advise that. Don't do as I do, just do as I say. And it doesn't matter if you're renting or have a permanent home, like, fill your home with plants. It's just that I feel like, because I had to move out of my last place so quickly, that everything's just temporary. So I don't want to just put roots down only to have to, like, move, because moving is such a pain. Such a pain.
I've got that pun as well, putting roots down.
Yeah, like, tick, that's another one.
It just comes naturally to you. So have you got, like, in your collection at your folks' place, have you got some really, fancy ones? And because it's a real collectible thing, a lot of plants as well. Like, there's some are insanely expensive because they're so rare.
Oh my gosh, like at the height of the pandemic, I remember hearing people selling like a cutting, like a one node cutting for like $4,000. I'm like, that's insane. Like that's insane. I could go on a holiday, all expenses paid holiday for that, and you just bought this one plant, one cutting, I should say. And
Was that like the variegated monstera?
no, I think that was what was it? It was a philodendron. I think Ilmanii, or it was one of the rarer ones at the time. But I mean, the Monstera was certainly up there too. And I remember early on, I had purchased a Monstera cutting, and I thought it was eye-watering at the time to purchase it for $250 because, I mean, it was eye-watering later because I killed it.
Oh,
So, well, yeah, we do kill things too, and it hurts. And that one has obviously stayed with me, but there are obviously lessons too. So yeah, there's some pretty cool things, I guess, in the collection, but a lot of things have died too because I didn't have necessarily the space out indoors. I had to throw a lot of things outside, and they're in a protected space, but I don't have, the heating going on and the humidifier and all that stuff going. I'm just like, throw you out there, whatever survives, just deal with it. So yeah, I've lost a lot of expensive things. But it's okay. Like they're going to crop up again and hopefully at a cheaper price.
yeah. And you learn from it as well. Because some
Yeah.
things, yeah, there's some things that aren't meant to be used in certain areas. So that's
Yep.
one way.
That's
I've
it.
got
Yeah.
a giant bird of paradise in my house, which
Mm.
probably it's not the best spot for it, but it's doing all right.
Yeah. And you're just like, you know what? I like the look of you indoors, and I know you don't belong there, but it's like I can leave you there for the moment and then, move you later or take you outside
Yeah.
when, you look like you really need it.
Now, what would be the biggest killer to indoor plants that people are doing? Really overwatering? Is that one of them?
Oh, I think that's probably a big one, or yeah, poor drainage. And yeah, just not feeling the soil or feeling how heavy the pot is before watering and just assuming that, I think we understand from a little age that plants need sunlight and water, but we just don't know how much of each. So, when you go and purchase your first plant, you're like, all right, great, sunlight, throw you in the like outside where you get exposed to like full sun all day plus the hot westerly, and then you're wondering why, or why is it dying? I thought it needed sunlight, or it needs water. All right, great, I'll just water every day. So it's just understanding that every plant, well, most plants have different needs depending on which like families you go for. Obviously, cacti and succulents very different to aroids, and just understanding like what are the native environments and how can you try and emulate majority of that at home. Obviously, you may not necessarily have the humidity up at 90% all the time, otherwise you're going to deal with mold issues. But they're certainly adaptable within reason. So just understanding really what plants need, and that will then help you understand how to better care for your plants. And also something I touched on before is like, don't stress out too much when there's a little browning on the leaf, or if a leaf has fallen, unless the whole plant looks like it's starting to become sick and everything's just falling apart, then obviously something's wrong. But if you're just seeing a little browning and it's not spreading, it's probably just a lack of humidity issue. It's colder now, or at least at the moment, people have their heaters on. It's going to dry out the air a lot faster. Your plants are then going to dry out, so you may then need to water a bit more often, or you'll notice the browning on the edges. So just being mindful of your environment too.
Yeah, and because I find a lot of people overwater too much because they're used to plants outside where you've
Yeah,
got no, you've got wind as well as the sun drying them out, whereas you don't
yeah.
have either of those inside, depending on where it is. So,
Mm,
and because you're looking at it every day, whereas you
yeah.
don't do that with plants outside, so you're thinking about it more. So that's
Yes.
they get a bit
Like I need
overwhelmed.
to, yeah, that's it. And I was speaking to a grower recently, and she said something which I think totally makes sense. I think the act of watering makes us feel like we're doing something, we're
Yeah,
caring. And that's why I've said it with misters. People like to mist because even though it's a very temporary solution for humidity, but it's like, I'm doing something. I feel good about this. And so I think that's why then people can fall into the trap of like overwatering too.
yeah, and I don't even think of the fact that in winter you're going to have the heater on, so that's actually going to dry it out more than what it might in summer. So yeah,
Yeah, that's it. And then your watering might have to change slightly. So even though like the plants, if anything, prefer to be on the slightly dry side than like completely wet. But if you're used to watering, say, every Tuesday, then you're going to water that may not be enough for your plant, because if you constantly have the heater on. So always, yeah, stick your finger in the soil and just check. Like I still do it too, and it's just because things change. I might have the window constantly open on that side, and then the plant dries out. So just always check.
Yeah, I've got one of those water meters, which has got the two prongs that you put in there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're pretty cheap, so I don't know how good they are, but it tells you you can see if it's dry or got the right amount of
Oh,
moisture.
great. Yeah, no, I've always just used my finger because I don't know. I've just that's what I've done. So I've certainly had people use the moisture meters, and that's been a saving grace for them. So I'm like, whatever's working for you, finger moisture meter, any of those other tools out there. But just use something if you're unsure.
Yeah. So when did the Gardening Australia call come? Yeah, go into there.
Yeah, so that was that's an amazing, and it still is such a wild an amazing ride to be on. But it was 2021 that Millie had approached me to do a segment with Costa, and I'm like, hell yeah, like just jump at the opportunity. And it was only because she had seen my article in the magazine. I'd been trying to write in Gardening Australia for a little while, but they've got a pool of writers, and I respect that. And then I finally got my opportunity and wrote a story. And then I think Millie saw my name and was like, who's this? I've never heard of your name before. And then she looked me up and saw I did workshops. So she was like, oh, it'd be great to maybe do one of those, I guess, making a terrarium or kokedama with Costa. And I'm like, cool. So we did that, and that was really fun. And then I think a few months down the track, they had gotten in touch and they were like, really liked what you did. Would you consider a guest presenter series? And I'm like, hell yes. Of course. Don't have to ask me twice. And then we sort of, yeah, I guess, mapped out, what I was going to do. And it was mostly focusing on indoor plants, small spaces. And that was really cool it was the start of me, I guess, meeting gardeners and seeing what lights them up and seeing how they garden. And then I guess thankfully they liked me enough to then decide to keep me. And so I think that was late 2022, but then it was announced in 2023 that I was on board as a regular presenter. So yeah, and here I am still with them. Thankfully, it's such a dream to be doing this, and really being able to meet the people and just seeing the joy in how gardening just brings us all together, regardless of how you're gardening, what you're growing. It just brings us all together.
Yeah. And there's so many good people involved in it as well. And I know on the TV shows, the behind the scenes crew are some awesome people as well.
Oh yeah, no, like the crew are just amazing. The presenters are, and they are exactly like how you see them on TV as they are in person. They're just genuine, real down to earth people who just want to, just garden and share that love with everyone. And it's so amazing to be around that team. Like, just seriously pinch myself every time I get to film, because I'm like, you get to do this.
And what's the filming schedule like? Is it like a all year round, or is it only it's like 6 months? Or
Yeah, so it's all year round, but we probably only film maybe like twice a month or 4 times a month, depending on, I guess, the crew as well, and who they're filming with. And because is there 9 presenters? Like, we've got quite a few presenters to film with, so we're not constantly, it's not like a back-to-back. Although last month was a bit of an exception. In March I was filming once every week, which was really cool. But then in April I'm not filming at all. But then it starts up again in May. So it's very, sporadic. And that's why I also then fill in my time with the writing, with other workshops or consults or whatever it may be, because obviously I still need to keep myself busy.
Yeah. And you do, I saw last year you were doing some courses in terrariums as well. So you're still doing like those workshops for people?
Yeah, so still doing workshops, but probably less, more so like me hosting the workshops, as in me finding a location, selling the tickets, and getting people. It's more if companies or I guess companies, whatever corporations decide that they want a terrarium or whatever workshop, then they'll engage me. Then I'll go because that way I find it's a lot easier. I don't have to worry about who's attending, how many tickets am I selling. It's just like, what, we've got X amount of people here. I bring all the materials for that and then do it and then go away. So that I find a lot easier than to run my own.
Yeah, I reckon that's something that horticultural boom? I don't like because I reckon it's improved more over the past 4 years, but because people like aquariums and it's basically the plant version of that,
Yeah.
and
And they're
you
not
can have so many
realizing that
cool little like landscapes within
themes.
the terrarium.
Yeah, there are some really cool ones out there. And I mean, I'm just showing people just the basis of it and understanding like what layers you need to then, keep this one alive, but also potentially go off and do their own. And it's great to see when you have had, I guess, past students get in touch and be like, look, like, I'm doing this as a side hustle now. I'm making and selling them. Or, I've just increased my collection because I just love having these things at home. So that's really cool to see.
And so, what's coming up for the future for yourself with the business? Are you still trying to do those same things and doing your own stuff on the side as well?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, because it seems to be working well for me at the moment, and I love that I get to, there are days that I get to spend at home writing, and other days it's going out, or other days of filming. So it's a good mix of things at the moment, and then some things get thrown in, and it's usually an extension of what I can do. So it's like, okay, we'll do that as well. But yeah, I don't really have any plans, and I'm probably not the best business person because I've never I've had people ask me, so what's your 5-year plan? What's your business plan? I'm like, I don't have one. I should have one. I should have a better idea. But I'm just like, as long as I'm doing what I love and getting paid for it too, because I have to still be able to pay rent and all that stuff, that, I'm quite happy with that. And it's just like, I see this going on for a while, but, whether it's just, focusing on things I am, or whether we continue to branch out and hopefully grow a team one day, but I don't know. So
Have you got
just
any more
continue.
courses, like any upcoming courses that you do, or you doing them all of them? Are they sort of through the other companies that?
Most of them are through companies. I did enjoy, one of mine was like a succulent wreath that I did at Christmas time. And people rather enjoyed that because there's one where I'd make with like just a preformed, I guess, wire frame, and others where I'd actually go to a vineyard and collect the clippings from the vines, and like that's quite an arduous task, but it was fun because then people got to weave their own, and because I guess it was quite an organic look, people love that more. But it's just the time to prep that workshop because then people got succulent cuttings and I'd have to divide each of the cuttings up so everyone got something that everyone got one of like sort of each, rather than one person getting one and then you looking over your neighbor's shoulder and being like, oh, how come you got that one and I don't? So you have to put things in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. So it's a lot of work. So I haven't done them, but I mean I really enjoyed it. So maybe might do that, but otherwise, I mean, I do have an online course that I don't even push. I did it because I was always finding that people were still asking questions, like the same questions, at least to me, about indoor plants and indoor plant care. So I'm like, all right, let's create a course and let's just put it out there. So I've just put it out there, but it's not like go and do it because I'm like, I don't know, terrible at selling.
So that's like a self-paced online course, is it?
Yeah, so it's an introduction to indoor plants where there's a one module on like all the basics of plant care, like light fertilizer, potting mix and everything, to then, focusing on 5 of the popular plants like fiddly fig, monstera, orchids, and then going into troubleshooting. And I really enjoyed the troubleshooting part because I want it to be like what's something you would Google. Because, if you saw something on your plant and you're like, and you might finger through a book, or go online and someone might have said, oh, it's an aphid, it's a mealybug, and you're like, what is that? Someone might not know to look that up, but they might look up, what is this fluffy thing on my leaf? Why is my leaf sticky? So it was phrasing it in a way where people would be like, all right, I got it, rather than me saying, what is an aphid? And you're like, what's an aphid? I don't know what to look for. But if I know that my leaf is sticky, I may have there's a good chance that it's one of the sap-sucking insects. Then we can go into like, okay, does it look like this? All right, you've got an aphid or you've got mealybug, blah, and this is how to treat it. So I really love the troubleshooting part because I find that that's where most people get confused, especially as first-time plant parents, and they're worried. And so I really wanted to, I guess, really hone in on that part.
And what's the major issue with people with their fiddle leaf figs? Because I know they were extremely popular, but people have trouble keeping them alive.
I find, I mean, they're really finicky, but it's just once you find the right spot, they're good. And I find they do need a lot of light, and as much morning sun as you can give them, the better. Obviously, the harsh western sun, not so much, but wintertime, it's not too bad. But they do need a lot of light, and it's the watering and making sure that when it comes to watering, they again, I find plants tend to be more on they prefer the dry side, always or on the side of caution, and better to underwater than over. But when it comes to the fiddle leaf fig, it's just like watering when they're just near dry. And they do like humidity, but I also find that, they can tolerate just being at home. So find that right spot and another thing I guess people would do is like they'll put a plant in that spot. It looks sad. They'll give it maybe a week, and maybe not even a week, a couple of days. They're like, let me move it here. Give it another couple of days, or let me move it here. Like, how would you feel if you were constantly uprooted and like had to, try and adapt to these new conditions, and then like, suddenly ripped out of your home again? So, give it time to adapt. And, if it doesn't seem to be, then it's like, all right, let's look into what is causing that issue. Maybe it is a lighting issue. Maybe it's watering. So rather than just sort of panicking and continually moving your plant, or even worse, taking it outside and then letting it bake in the hot sun.
And do those wicking pots work for indoor plants, or do they get too much water if they're
No,
using them?
I find, I mean, I've got a couple of wicking pots. I've found them to be good so far. I haven't had any issues. They're certainly a good tool to have if you have, if you're maybe away a bit more often, especially now that we all can travel. So potentially, yeah, look into wicking pots if you need.
Yeah, because I was wondering because when they're outside, they'll go through the water a lot quicker because they get dried out more. So I was just wondering if they might be too wet.
As long as then you're not constantly,
Yeah.
being mindful that there is a source that they can wick from, and then you're not constantly topping that up. Again, I think it's just being mindful of your actions and also the context in which the plants are in.
Yeah, and probably some plants will be happy with them and some won't.
Yeah.
Last question for you, Tammy, is who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
Oh, a good guest. I've met so many people recently. I would think if you haven't had him already, I'm gonna go with Angus Stewart.
Wow.
He lives in Tassie. I mean, he was once a Gardening Australia presenter, but he's doing his own things now, and he's just a native plant guru, and he's just such a lovely person. Like, just exudes warmth and joy. So that's the person who comes to my mind. And he'd be great talking plants too. So if you can get him, I'd certainly, love for you to have him on the show.
Yeah, I did reach out to him a while ago, I think, but I'll try again because he was involved with Nadia Cole's garden from Platylobium at the garden show.
Yep.
He had something to do with the plants as well for that. So
okay. Yeah, no, I think he'd be great. And he's just such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to native plants. I mean, and gardening, but native plants is certainly his jam. So
yeah, because a lot of the kangaroo paws I know people have struggled with, but there were ones he's suggesting more than just an annual, which a lot of the other ones have been. So.
That's unfortunate, but yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of work has been done on breeding for the kangaroo paws to survive at least in our humid environment in Sydney. Because a lot of people are just like, oh, they look great, and then they're dying throughout summer. It's just like, well, you just probably haven't chosen the right ones.
Yeah. I can't thank you enough for coming on, Tammy. I've loved chatting to you,
worries.
and have the first guest talking about indoor plants, so that's good to hear as well. But yeah, thanks
Well,
so
I
much
hope
for
it was
coming on.
a useful chat as well. I feel like I've just sort of rambled on about life and plants, but yeah, hopefully got something out of it.
No, it was, yeah, because there's, like I said, the indoor plant movement's growing massively, so there'll be a lot of people getting benefit out of it. So thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks, Joel.